time to say good afternoon to everyone. I'm Srinath Perera, Chair Professor in Built Environment and Construction Management at Western Sydney University. So actually, there's a small story behind, in the sense, I'm the standby presenter for this presentation. My colleague, Sean Jin, was to be here, but couldn't make it in the last minute, falling sick just before we left. So I ended up presenting, but I'm part of the supervision team, and the work relates to Augustine, who's our PhD candidate working on this project. So in this project, we are pretty much looking at developing a carbon trading system, a blockchain-based carbon trading system for the construction industry to capture or to deal with excess carbon that is there in building projects. I thought I'll just introduce a little bit about our center, given the opportunity to give some context of the research work we do carry out. So I'm part of I'm the director for the Center for Smart Modern Construction, which was established in 2017 at Western Sydney University. And we are a research center that is an industry collaborative research center. We have several industry partners working in various areas in construction industry, and also they fund our research work, and we are fully externally funded on our research activities. So we have about 25 doctoral candidates currently working in the center. We have about 15 academic staff helping with the research activities in the center as well. Our focus areas include 5 thematic areas as indicated: industrialization, digitalization, resilience, sustainability, and globalization are the 5 thematic areas. So our research projects pretty much revolve on those. We have a significant amount of funding generated, over 2 million Australian dollars generated over the past 5 years from the center and through external funding mechanisms. And then we have a significant portfolio of publications that are presenting our research work to the sector, to the industry, as well as to academia. Okay, coming on to the subject area, as you know, 2050 is one of the major targets for carbon emission controls. So we are looking at significant reductions. 2030 is the first step, and 2050 is the next step in achieving climate objectives. So there's lots of activity that are going on towards reduction of carbon, but construction industry is contributing to more than 30% of emissions globally. And this is why it is important as a sector to look at and how do we deal with carbon. So when we talk about carbon emissions, there are different carbon emission reduction strategies available, as well as greenhouse gas emission portfolios that are there, and schemes that are going to reduce carbon emissions. So there are many carbon trading implementations world over. If you look at in our initial review of carbon trading, we found that there are carbon trading systems for oil and gas, for agriculture, for maritime sector, for manufacturing, and various other sectors. But we didn't find anything that is related to the construction industry. There is nothing relates to the built environment per se. Now, this leads to the question as to why do we need a specific carbon trading system for the construction sector? So the reason comes from the fact that, first thing, that it is one of the significant carbon emitters for the construction sector. As I said, over 30% globally, emissions are coming from the construction sector, from the built environment. But then we need to also understand the emission profile of embodied carbon and operational carbon. I think second presenter talked a little bit about that, so elaborate a little bit on that. We have to understand the embodied carbon is the carbon emitted in the production of materials, components that go into constructing a building. Operational carbon is basically carbon emissions that do occur in the operation of the buildings. Generally, many buildings have a greater operational carbon profile compared to embodied carbon. However, it depends on the kind of buildings. For example, warehouse buildings would have the opposite effect, where embodied carbon is much greater than the operational carbon component. We want to take a holistic view and take the life cycle carbon emissions in the construction sector in order to decide on what amount of carbon is emitted in a construction project. But then, when carbon emissions do occur, we have to think about what happens with these carbon emissions. We can have strategies to reduce carbon, strategies to reduce operational carbon. So we have zero carbon buildings that are popularly known as zero carbon, but then they don't consider the embodied carbon component. Then embodied carbon reduction can be achieved as well. But then often buildings end up with a net positive carbon emission component. The main way to eliminate that is to trade that excessive carbon component. So this is why we are suggesting to have a carbon trading system specifically targeting the construction sector. So the overall aim, as I mentioned in this doctoral study, is to come up with a carbon trading framework, which is consisting of various components, and strategically, first part of this research is to model the carbon trading components that are there, and then the next phase of that would be to implement that model and develop the carbon trading system on a blockchain platform, and then subsequently test and validate that. So there are different kinds of carbon trading systems that we have. There are two major types identified: cap and trade systems, baseline credit scheme systems. These are the most popular ways in which carbon trading has been classified. But they are mainly working on quotas of carbon allocations and trading to offset that carbon. However, what we are promoting is finding ways of offsetting excess carbon. Carbon that cannot be mitigated elsewhere needs to be offset in order to achieve truly net zero solutions. And that's why we are promoting offsetting of carbon. There are various carbon trading systems that are there for various other sectors we have looked at, and we have come up with a key component strategy. This includes basically 4 categories: construction market, construction strategies, construction plan, and construction policies. What we are doing is using system dynamics modeling technique as the way to capture and model the structure of this. So most of our research projects, I mean, we have several blockchain-related research projects and several digital application-related projects. Most of it, we first capture the knowledge area, domain knowledge area, model it in before we develop a system solution for that. And therefore, we're following the same protocol here as well. So first component is in this is markets. In that we have identified various subcomponents of that. This model shows the current findings based on our initial scanning of literature and then analyzing the literature. We can see structure, capacity, pricing, goods to be traded, trading platforms, coverage of scope, quota allocations, things that are important components of the market structure that is to be created, and we then subdivide them into various other categories. Then there is the next component, which is the strategies component, which is basically talking about the strategies to be adopted in managing carbon in construction projects. And then they are modeled as indicated in here, the emissions, trading methodologies, then efficiency of trading methodologies, how do we set cap setting mechanisms, allocation of methods for construction industry, various aspects are again divided into subcategories. Next part deals with the planning of it. Plan involves a list of consistently arranged steps undertaken in dealing with the trading system. And there are components, as indicated here, involves financial resources, cash flow management, risk management, resourcing, and capacity building for the construction sector identified at present. Now, the next component is the last component, policies. And the policies basically are subcategorized as supervision, banking mechanisms, legislations, compliance, things like that, and motivating reporting and verification mechanisms, MRV mechanisms, and so the next stage of this involves that this is based on literature findings, but we are going to take this to the next stage by using an expert forum to directly access expert knowledge to verify these components, modify as required, and develop the detailed knowledge structure that is required for building the trading system. So that's the work that is to be carried out in moving forward. Some of the references we used, and then just wanted to highlight some of our publications in blockchain that are being out there. You can use the QR code to access. There are so many other publications that we have made in blockchain related to other projects, which is relevant to the audience here, and several other publications as well. You can find our information on our website. Please use these links for additional information. Thank you.